Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you if you're coming on. I want to welcome you. I think my video is still moving, but I want to welcome you to this little event tonight. And I wanted to share something that can really change your entire life. And this is really the magic, and I hope you're in for it. But if you're coming on, make sure you say hello to me. If you're watching on the replay, type in hashtag replay. That would be great. But what I want to get into tonight is understanding the self. So if you're like me, maybe in your life you wanted to achieve great things. You know, growing up, when you're born, if you think back until the first memory you ever had, and maybe you were like 3 or 4 years old, and I don't remember having a big desire to do anything in the world. I just remember being present in the moment, whether I was playing with my trucks or whether I was listening to my mom and dad fight or whether I was outside in the fields running around. I think children really understand what it's like to be in the moment. Hi, Christy. Glad to see you. Thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it. So when we're kids, we don't really think about what the future is going to hold overall. Maybe at some point we do, but usually we're just more present. And in the journey that I found along the way is many people start to look for their happiness, their bliss. And they're looking for these things outside of themselves. Even though I think they know it's written in the program within that there is no happiness outside of ourselves. And yet the entire planet seems to be looking for happiness outside of ourselves. And you know, for me, the reason I didn't know that it was within is because as a child, and if you, especially if you come from a traumatic family and there's always trauma in the family, there was never any happiness in the home, and therefore you wouldn't know as a child to go within because it doesn't make sense. You're looking around you and you think that family looks happy or those people look happy, but in my family it's not happy. So it's the journey that leads us to understand, and I think what it is a lot of people have to go out to the world and realize that they have to fall down a lot. They have to realize that happiness is not going to be found in a lot of money, or in another career, or in higher status positions within the organization, or even in the relationship that we're wanting or that we're in. None of that is going to create what we're looking for. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to move to the pad. But this is really fascinating if we really look at it. So, and I would recommend, if this resonates with you at all, that you take a little bit of time and sit with it in silence, because it is very profound. And I think sometimes people just gloss over very profound information. What I tend to do is when I find something that starts to resonate, I really sit with it and I'll meditate on it for a long time, hour, 2 hours, and just sit so I can hear it. So basically what it comes down to is this. There is, I'm going to make a triangle here as a model. I would call this the Trinity, okay? But the Trinity is kind of unique because what the Trinity consists of is the knower, okay? The knower would be the one that knows, and that would be the true self. So I might call that the self, all right? So the knower, you could also call it the seer. You could even maybe say it's the observer. It's the one that's watching, okay? Now, what happens is the knower creates a process of knowing. So the knowing is the, almost like the verb, right? So the knower is knowing, and then what would it know? The known, right? So that would be the triad, all right? The triad. And basically this is where we live. People forget that this is who they are. They get caught up in thinking. We could call this thinking. In fact, this would be the thinker. So the thinker is thinking about the object that they're thinking about. And what's fascinating with this is in this process of us thinking, about the object, we start to lose our identity. We start to really miss out on who we really are. So our energy follows attention, and as our energy goes into the process of knowing or thinking or doing or whatever else we want to put in there, and then we're focusing on the object, which is the known, or the object itself, we will oftentimes get caught up in this and we lose ourselves believing that we are the object, or believing that we are the thoughts that surround the object. And this is why we have so much pain on the planet, because people do not know who they are. So you could take any aspect of life and you're going to find the triads occurring. And there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different roles that we could play as the knower, the observer, the thinker, the doer, whatever. It's the one that's observing it. Now, the way I look at this is people are suffering today. People are suffering in anxiety. By the way, anxiety is about the future. Anxiety is thoughts about the future, maybe being unhealthy, maybe being fearful because we have wars, because there's a great reset coming, because there's economic challenges. Anxiety is really the future, and we don't sit right with it, so we get anxiety. Other people are experiencing depression. And depression is the past. Depression is coming from past filters and past programs. So that would be the past. And if you notice, these problems are occurring outside of the present moment. In this present moment, there are no problems. There's only thinking that causes the problems. And that thought process will actually cause a feeling in the body, right? So I had a vision today of how I look at this, and I think it might be interesting for you as well. When we're having a state of depression, and I've had this, so I know this very, very up front. I've also had anxiety. Okay, I've suffered in my life with depression, anxiety, and sometimes very powerful, where I didn't want to get out of bed. And today, more and more people are suffering from depression and anxiety. So what we have to do is we have to start to look at what's causing this and how do we heal this. Well, there's something we can do by, first of all, realizing, if you ask the question, who is experiencing the depression? Who is experiencing the anxiety? It could be anything, by the way. You can replace anxiety or depression with any other word. Could be poverty. Could be sickness. It doesn't matter what it is. There is only one that's experiencing that. And the question becomes, who is that one? And it's the I. The I. I am experiencing anxiety. Because the future, so listen to this, because the future doesn't look very good. They have all kinds of, I could go a list of things that are happening in the world that could cause so many people anxiety. And so they say, I have anxiety, right? So what's interesting is this I actually has, like, if you think of it as a human being, I'm going to put a little face on it here. Okay, the I actually has a bag almost over its shoulders. And I like to use this analogy. Let's say it's holding a bag. And in that bag, like Santa Claus, right, are all these different objects. And these objects, well, you can list them if you're watching. List what an object would be. We could use the depression, and we could use the anxiety as objects in the bag. But again, it could be sickness. It could be poverty. It could be wealth. It could be, a lot of friends. You could have places. Basically it's anything that you can imagine can be put in that bag. And so when this I person, this self, says here's a really good one. Some of you might relate to this. I am an alcoholic. I remember years ago going to AA, and I know it's helped a lot of people. So this is not to diss AA, because I know how it's helped a lot of people. But the first thing that happened that I did not like and it did not resonate with me is when you stood up to introduce yourself, you would say, I am your name, and you would say, I am an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic. And so right away, what we're doing is we're anchoring the I, the self, with a temporary thing called alcoholism. And so for me, that didn't sit well, because nobody is an alcoholic. They may experience a wave of addiction or alcoholism, but that is not who they are. So when we automatically assign the I to the object, we've lost the truth. And we are now starting a spiral into a chain of thoughts that creates more of a bad thing, okay? So the I may say, I am depressed. I am depressed. Now, is that really true? Obviously, my pad's not working in the best place. It's behind me. Oh well, still working on my pad techniques. So I am depressed. Is that a true statement? And so the only way you're going to know if it's true is to investigate it, right? So any statement that we're making using the I am, and by the way, every day, every one of your thoughts starts with I am. The entire universe is an I am statement. So if we go back to the very first thought that was ever created in the beginning, before time, space, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Have you ever heard that? The beginning thought was I. The I thought was the very first thought ever created. And that is a reflection of the Absolute. The Absolute cannot be talked about. The Absolute is beyond mind. The Absolute created the I. The I is also known as the ego, or the first illusion, or the first ignorance. Because what's causing the entire universe to exist is simply illusion, ignorance. It is a reflection of the ego, or a very bad reflection of the Absolute, the heart. So the first one is I, and I creates. The first I, if you think of it like a circle, is the creation of the wholeness. All is all. So this I that's being created is the very first thought. I am is presence. So I want you to think of this as pure and simple being. Notice I didn't say doing. It's being. Pure and simple being. That is your true nature. And that pure and simple being is even more than we can imagine. It is the profound happiness. It is our true nature. It is stillness. That is who we really are. And it's even beyond that. I can't say the I is not even who we are, but the first thing we must do to discover who we are, and to discover how we're lying to ourselves every day, and how we're chasing so many things that are not who we are, believing that if we get more of something, more of somebody, going more of some place, we're going to achieve this happiness or this joy or this bliss. Absolutely not true. You can get all the money you want in the world, you're not going to be happy. You can have all the travel with the yachts, you're not going to be happy. All the status, you can have the fame, you can have it all. It will not make you happy. And the reason for that is because you cannot seek happiness. You cannot seek peace. Because what you're seeking is already who you are. You can't find something that you've never lost. In fact, I've done this many times. Have you ever like taken a pen or glasses and you put it behind your ear, right? And you start talking to somebody, and the next thing you know, you need your pen. You're like, I've lost my pen. Where's my pen? Oh my gosh, that was my grandfather's pen. It was so important to me. Where is I can't believe I've lost my pen. And all of a sudden, you're so concerned. You've worked up yourself. You have fear because maybe it's an expensive pen. And all of a sudden you have all this fear that you've lost the pen. Oh my God, I've lost it. And then eventually somebody says, the pen's right in your ear there. But I didn't notice it. And here I was worried about losing this beautiful pen, but I've had it all along. And that's what's happening on the planet. People have forgotten who they are. So when we're out seeking all that we are, looking for it somewhere else in the world, and what we're looking for is peace. That's really what we want. We want the peace. And peace is happiness. Peace is stillness. So that is our true essence. But what's fascinating about this, Christy, is when we take the I, and then we actually have I am, right? So now we have this pure being, I am. And the first thing we have to do is investigate who is the I am. Did you realize, Christy, that every single day, every thought that comes from you, comes through you, starts with I am? When you wake up in the morning, I am tired, I am hungry, I want a cup of coffee. It all comes from that same place. Every human being starts their day with I. The I is God in the body. I am is God in the body. Now, I don't talk about this as religion because to me, religion is man's way to create a box and put God in it. But this is definitely very powerful in regard to who is the I. So when we go back to say, I am depressed. So this is where we start getting the chain reaction here. I am depressed. Right? And a lot of people are going to go through this. And you can fill in whatever words you want to right here. But here's what we have to do to find out the truth. That bag, remember we talked about the bag over here. The bag contains depression. Have you ever had a time in your life when you're not depressed? Have you ever had a time in your life where you're not alcoholic? Have you ever had a time in your life when you're not wealthy? When you're not feeling good? Or have you ever had a time in your life where you have felt great and other times where you feel horrible, right? I think anything I put in that box, we've all experienced at some point. Maybe we haven't been rich, but we felt rich, and other times we felt poor, right? So these are moving. These are elements of life. But when we think I am depressed, you've just said that the I am is depressed, and that's not true. How do we find that out? Because depression comes into our existence and moves out of our existence. Does that make sense? So depression will come in and out. If I think about my life, I remember as a kid having times where I was very happy and I was usually enthralled in the moment playing with my trucks, lost in time with no problems and no worries because I was very present playing with my Tonka truck or running around the fields, even though my family had tremendous challenges. However, when I would get home from playing or when my dad would come home and start screaming, all of a sudden I have pain and suffering and I am fearful or I am depressed or I have anxiety, right? So here's the question. Was the anxiety and depression always there? And the answer is no, it wasn't always there. It came into my field of awareness like a cloud coming into the sky. And it moved on through until it's no longer there. Money has come into my life and it's left my life. Come back into my life, left my life. Come back into my life, right? So these are all temporary things that move through the field of consciousness. And so whatever moves through is not real. I mean, it seems real to us because we're living in this dream, but it's not real. The real is always there. If it's real, it's never disappeared. So what is real in this process? Well, let's go back to it and look. Before you ever had depression, is it true that you had the I am? When was the first time you ever thought the thought, I am? Maybe you can think of it. You know, when I thought back to my childhood, I thought, well, first memories I have, I think were probably around 3 or 4 years old that I can remember. And I knew that I existed, so I knew that I am Vince, right? So here we go. As a little child, the program becomes I am, and then you put your name on it. So now people start to identify themselves as their name. Christy, let me ask you, your whole life, from the time you remember, you've been called Christy. Is that right? And so if somebody asks you who you are, it's normal for the first word to say, well, I'm Christy. For me, the first word would typically be, I'm Vince. And then you might add the other things. I am 55 years old. I am spiritual, right? You could be religious. You could be a Christian. You could be a Buddhist. So what we start to do is we start to take the pure and simple being, the absolute being that we are, that has never changed, the observer. What is that I am? It goes back to this. It is the knower. It is the seer. It is the self. That has never changed. From the time you were born and you looked out of your eyes, the same I am presence was there at the time of your birth as when you were 4 years old, as the time you remember a tragedy happened in the family. You, the observer, was still there. The tragedy came through and has passed. Everything comes through and passes except the observer. So the identity gets caught up in thinking about whatever's happening. Thinking about it. I am depressed. So there's the object called depression, and there's the subject thinking about depression, and then there's thinking about it, right? So there's the depression, the one thinking about depression, and the thinking about it. That's the triad. And the key to understand here is that there is only one. The triad is an illusion. There is only the knower. And the knower has to have the known for the knower to exist. The seer has to have the seen for the seer to exist. If there was nothing to be seen, there would be no seer. If there was nothing to be known, there would be no knower. Does this make sense? So instantaneous creation is when the creator and the creation come together and rise and fall together, right? So they come together and they go together, and when they subside together. There cannot be anything to be seen without a seer, and there can't be anything to be known without the knower. So the challenge that we have in our life is that we're spending our entire time actually seeking something outside of ourselves. We're seeking money because we believe that if I make more money, I'll be happy. Now, typically, obviously, we need money in the third dimensional space to feed our family, to clothe ourselves, to get some health care. However, let's be honest. We in America, I've found teaching all over the world that we are some of the most miserable people on the planet. And we're miserable because I think oftentimes we have too much and we're distracted from knowing what we really have. So what we really just need, and I'm not saying we can't have the other things, I'm just saying if we really start to detach from the needs of having more and more and more and more, and we start to be okay in gratitude what we do have, that's all we really need. We don't get any more happiness with money. At a certain level, as long as you have food, health care, can take care of your kids, then you can have total, I should say safety net comfort. But the thing is, we want more and more and more because that's the program of the ego. It wants more. And the key is that we must understand that as much as I keep seeking more things, could be anything. It could be more sex. That's a big one today. I want more sex, more relationships, more time with somebody. I want more money, more status, more goods, more houses, more travel, more food, more alcohol, more drugs. And the more and more and more is not creating more and more happiness. It's creating more and more defragmentation. Fragmentation of the self. And so we're breaking out parts of ourselves and we don't even know who we are. So the ultimate goal then is to begin to discover who we really are. Who is it that wants the money? So I have the me, the thought, right? The thinker. I have the thought, I want more money. And then the question should be, who is it that wants more money? And that's where we really start to dive deep to figure out who is it that wants this? And it always comes back to the same answer. It comes back to the I. If I want something, right? I want, which means I don't have, that's already a void. I want money. Okay, so then we put our focus on the money or wanting. I want money. That's where people are focusing. However, the question becomes, who wants the money? Who is it that wants this money? And if you ask the question, who wants the money? I do. Who is it? Oh, it's I. Now we discover I want the money. Now we got to go deeper with this. We got to ask, who is this I that wants the money? Who is this I? And this is where it gets tricky because the mind wants to answer the question. The mind always wants to answer something. But we don't want to answer that question because it's the wrong answer. Anytime the mind answers it, it's going to be wrong. We need to just ask the question, who is the I? Who am I? And we just sit with it. And what we're really looking to do is not think about it. We don't want the thought. The thought is a lie. Whatever the mind tells you about who I am is not true. What I want is just be. I want to be in that I am presence. So as I just sit and I say, okay, who am I? Who am I? Now, the mind wants to answer right away, you're you, or whatever it wants to say. But just start to embody the feeling of I. What does it mean in the body to feel that I am? To be present. What does it mean? What does it feel to be present, that I am? I am not doing anything. I'm not having anything. I'm not wanting anything. What if I'm not even thinking anything? I just am. I just am. And so what we're doing is we're pulling ourselves back on that triad. The I, instead of thinking, right? Instead of the process, we're not caught up in that. And we're not over here with the money or whatever the object is. We instead pull ourselves back, all the way back to the source of the thinker. Who is this? before any process of thinking, before any process of doing, before any process of having. All these are temporary. These are all temporal. None of those are real. We're continuing to chase cycle after cycle, a process that comes and goes, time and space. Doing something, it's temporary. It has a beginning and an end. Having, you buy it, then you eventually will sell it or lose it. All of this is a process. The having of things comes and goes, but this never comes and goes. This is infinite. And the thing is, people do not even know who they are. And yet they want to tell us about all the things that are outside of us as if they know what those are. And that is why it's such a challenge, because we are so hypnotized. Looking from the eye outwards, we have two eyeballs, right? And those two eyes are looking outwards. And since it's two, it's called duality. Duality takes one and breaks it into 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 billion. And it continues on and on, fragmenting. And it's chasing the untruth. But within the self, there is also another eye. You've maybe heard of the third eye. But the third eye is one, it's singular. And the third eye looks inside the self. These are looking to the outside world, and it creates the world that we see. Duality is created in the mind of us. All is mind. Everything you see is in the mind. We are creating and co-creating everything by looking outwards. And as long as the self, the real self, is looking out, it's going to create the world, the problems, and the solutions go hand in hand with the problem. The good goes hand in hand with the evil. They come together in a package. The desire and the fulfillment of the desire, the pain and the pleasure, all goes together. When we turn that eyeball into ourselves, the world disappears. The physical disappears. The world no longer exists because now we close these eyes and we go inside ourselves and we begin to ask the question, who is this? Who is this self? Who is this I since the beginning of time? Who is this I am? Who is this I that started to add all these different thoughts and constructs and ideas and processes and started to have and do and want? Who is that? Because until we answer that question, we will never know truth. In fact, some say that it is the cycle of never-ending birth and death, just like everything has seasons. Our mind is continuing to go through cycle after cycle, chasing the pain and the pleasure. Running from pain, chasing pleasure, and after pleasure comes pain in every scenario, and after pain comes pleasure. And this is how we continue in constant creation in the universe. It's a sine wave. But when we go inside of ourselves and we begin to look at who is it that's doing this? Who is it that wants the money? Who is it that's born? Who is it that dies? And you might even ask, who am I not? Because for me, I had to ask the first question because I don't know who I am. I don't believe we can know who we are because the finite mind, the finite, which has a beginning and an end, can never understand or comprehend the infinite, the absolute. So all we can do is create words that do not define the truth, but lead us to an idea of what truth might be. So sometimes you have to ask, who am I not? And I might realize that I'm not my body. If I am not my body, but I identify as my body, then I've got to start asking, if I'm not my body, who am I? Am I my thoughts? Well, no, because the thoughts change as well. My thoughts today at 55 are different thoughts than they were when I was 7, which means that I've changed completely from the time I was 7. So, and I haven't changed at all, but if I believed my thoughts were me, they have come and they've gone. And when there's no thoughts moving through me, I am still me. So I can't be my thoughts. When there's no body, I am still me. Does that make sense? And to make that really clear, because some people don't get that, I'll make it very simple. There's 3 states of consciousness. The first one is called waking. Right now, if you're awake, you're in the waking state. You're fully experiencing your body and your mind. You're thinking and you have feeling in the body. This is the state most people consider reality. However, it is not reality. This is just a state of consciousness. The next state is called dreaming. And dreaming is very similar to waking, except it's shorter. And the difference also is your body changes. If you have, and I remember my dreams, since I've been meditating, I have tremendous dreams. But the thing is, you don't know you have a body that's sleeping in a bed. You don't even think about that. In your dream, you're living a different life. The mind is still operative in the dream, but you have a different world. Maybe you're riding a camel and next thing you know, you're flying through space. It all seems so normal. That is the mind. That's called the dream state of consciousness. You have to be within all states of consciousness if it is real. So the third state of consciousness is called deep sleep or dreamless sleep. There's no dreams. And what's fascinating is in this state of consciousness, there is no mind and there is no body. You have no mind, there's no thoughts, you don't know your name. At the end of the day, you're not there. There's no body there, there's no place, there's no time, there's no role. But here's the amazing thing. You know what's still in this state of consciousness is awareness. Awareness is still occurring. Because if your name was called because there's a fire, you would be awakened immediately into the body, into the mind, and you would take action. However, your awareness is still there. But your awareness is in all 3 states of consciousness. All 3. So who are you? Well, you're closer to awareness than you are to the body or the mind, because these 2 do not show up in the 3rd state. But awareness shows up in every state. So we are the ever-present presence of awareness that allows everything to move through it. And the way I look at it, in the best analogy is we are like the movie screen. Like the screen behind me here. There's a movie playing and the screen is reflecting the movie. And if you've ever gone to a theater, you'll see that. Yeah, Christy, I'm the spirit that resides in the body. Not a body with a spirit. That's wonderful. So the screen is actually what the projector is projecting on. And we can see a lot of things happen on that screen. We can see fires. If you've ever been to the movies, we could see shootings. We could see death. We could see sadness and grief and, all kinds of love and connection. All that's happening on the screen of consciousness. And yet when the movie's over, the screen is still there, never touched. Nothing has been done to the screen. The movie's over. It all moved through the screen, and now it's gone. Well, that screen is the awareness. That is the screen of consciousness, the magic screen. And so we are the space that allows all of the energy, time, space, and physicality to move through. And that is as close as I can say that we are the awareness. So what we want to do is avoid, if we can, identifying any of these objects in the bag of the I with the I am self. Instead, when we experience depression, we don't say I'm depressed. We would say I am experiencing a wave of depression. And then we just back into the self and watch it, allow it to feel. Feel it, but know what comes will go. I'm feeling it, but I am not it. So we create that space in between the self and the object, the subject and the object. And then we don't get caught up in that thinking about it where it becomes anchored to us. When money comes into my life, I am not the money. Money comes and money goes. I watch the money come and I watch the money go, which it must do. It's currency. When sickness comes into the life, I am not sick. I might be experiencing a wave of sickness, but I am not anything. I am pure and perfect being as you are. But the sickness comes through, we watch it, we don't anchor to it, and we let it move through. Because just as surely as I was well, I will be well again. But wellness also moves through because we get sick, right? So anything that has a beginning and an end is not us. We are the ever-present presence and the choiceless awareness. So if you were watching on replay, thank you so much for stopping by. And Christy, thank you for watching the whole thing. You've been here, I think, the whole time. I appreciate you. And I hope this gives you some value, some insights maybe that are new. But I think the more that we realize who we are not, and the more we sit back into that ease of being instead of the dis-ease of separating the oneness to become two, that creates the dis or dis-ease. We are pure, simple, vibrant, loving, happy beings beyond the mind, beyond the thinking mind. That is who we are. That's our true nature. Everything else is a play of energy. But because we forget who we are, and the great metaphor was like King Lear and John Smith. If John Smith is playing King Lear, and King Lear has the problems with the battles that he has to manage, his daughters are having troubles, he's very stressed out. As an actor, you're playing those parts. You're playing the role of King Lear. But when you leave stage, if you stay in the role, you're going to carry that stress with you. And if you did that, somebody's going to say, you're not King Lear, you're John Smith. No, I'm King Lear. No, you're John Smith. You don't have those problems. I do have those problems. So what we have to do is trace back the thoughts to the source. Okay, when did the problem start? Oh, well, it started here. Great, let's find it deeper. Let's go back deeper. And we keep retracing by asking questions. Who am I? I'm King Lear. Okay, if I'm King Lear, how far back does that go? We can keep asking the questions going back until we find the source. And we're going to discover we were John Smith who took on a role as King Lear. And now you can let King Lear go because those are not your problems. The same with the world. All the problems in the world are not ours. Those are the problems of the mind. We have no problems. Now we might experience these problems because we've identified with the body-mind complex, but that's not who we are. So in that we can bring our stillness and our peace. And when we have stillness and peace within us, no matter what's happening in the world, then we change the world by changing our internal world. So I want to thank you. Thanks for watching tonight. Many blessings. And if you're watching on replay, I hope this touched you. Let me know below if it did help on any area. And I will keep coming back and keep sharing. Much love to you all. Have a beautiful night.